Dave Gertson. Okay. So anyway, so tonight, Lynda Mapes is speaking to us. A talk on orcas that reflects her book, Orcas Shared Waters, Share Home. And I was very lucky. I got to see that presentation at the Seattle Library back in late January. And I thought this is just a perfect talk for a group of naturalists, right? Because we all care about orcas. So we're really pleased to have Lynda. And Lynda, I think you can take it away. I'm going to keep monitoring people,
Great.
Letting people in and checking my email. I see there is one note in the chat, and I don't know what it is. Let's see.
It's just a thanks.
Okay.
We should decide. Lynda, would you like us to field questions at the end or as they show up? What's your preference?
I actually like questions whenever people want to ask them. I'm here for you. And if you got a question, ask me. You can ask me anything. So by all means, if you got a question, put it in the chat. Renee will speak it out and we'll take it from there. Okay. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm Lynda Mapes, and I'm really glad to be with you tonight. I'm actually speaking to you from the Harvard Forest on the East Coast. It's in central Massachusetts, and I'm here on a fellowship leave from my usual job at the Seattle Times, where I cover the environment and Native American tribes. And I'm here because I'm writing a book about forests and our relationship with forests, the importance of forests to salmon, the importance to forests to our own survival. The working title of the book is Stumped. So you get the idea. It'll be out in a couple of years. So hopefully we'll rendezvous once it's out. But tonight, I'm here to talk with you about orcas. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to show you some slides, which are photographs taken by my former colleague at the paper, Steve Ringman, who's since retired. Incredible photographer. We worked together for decades at the paper, and Steve, and also graphic artist Emily Ng, created beautiful artwork for the book Orca Shared Waters, Shared Home. I'm going to show you some of Steve's photographs. So I hope you'll enjoy that. I'm also going to talk as we go along about the natural history of orcas. And by all means, do ask me questions. Before we get started, I do want to point out that this is a book that was co-published with the Seattle Times and the Mountaineers Braided River imprint, which is their conservation imprint. And they did a beautiful job with this book. I'm very proud to be a Braided River author. Braided River really does try to do something that a lot of other publishers don't when they finish a book. That's just the beginning for them. They use books as conservation tools to get the word out about this world that we care so much about and the species in it. So I want to say a big thank you to the team at Braided River, led by Helen Chirulo. They do unique nonprofit work. So hats off to them. The other publisher was the Seattle Times, which is locally produced for you every day. It's like craft brewed journalism, made fresh every day for you since 1886. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to try sharing my screen. See how that works for us. Hopefully it will work. You all seeing that okay? Look good?
Looks great.
All right, great. So Orca Shared Waters, Shared Home. I want to, before I launch into the slideshow, also call out someone who's very important to me and ask us all to appreciate the life of Ken Balcom. So Ken Balcom recently passed. I wrote his obituary in the Seattle Times. And, Ken Balcom, he did something that really no one else has done. He's a scientist, but he's also a very close observer and lover of orcas. And he really, with guidance from other scientists, created what is today known as the survey for the orcas, the southern residents in our waters, observing them closely enough to get photographs of the saddle patches on each and every animal. And it was he who came to reveal to the world that these are individuals that are homebodies. These are the local southern residents. These aren't an endlessly replenished pool of random orcas coming from all over, but rather a closely linked group of 3 families that habituate the waters of Puget Sound and the Salish Sea and move between really about as far north on Vancouver Island as the Campbell River, south to the Golden Gate. That's their range. That is their home range. They do forage outside those boundaries a bit, but mostly that's where they hang. And it was he who revealed that to the world. And it was the knowledge that this is actually a small, limited pool of orcas that helped shut down the orca fishery that used to exist in the Salish Sea, primarily right in Puget Sound. These orcas were hunted for capture, for display, for profit in aquariums and oceanariums around the world. And Puget Sound for more than 10 years was the primary source of supply. But it was the reveal in '76 by Ken Balcom and the Center for Orca Research that put a stop to that, when people understood that, in fact, this was a very small number of animals. So thank you to Ken Balcom and his team at Orca Research, who revealed these animals as individuals and as families. He knew them as individuals and as families. I think he actually was outlived by only one, and she's still out there, L25. She's the oldest of all the Southern residents. She is the matriarch of all the pods. She is the oldest known living orca whale today. And she was born, we think, in about 1930, which would put her in her 90s, which is an incredible idea. And she is a witness to all the changes in our world. She is a living environmental archive. So with that, I just wanted to salute the life of Ken Balcom. He was impossible, difficult, irascible, egotistical. Anyone who worked with him or knew him is probably laughing as I say that, because he was all of those things. He was a salty dog. He didn't really care about the formalities of anything. He was profane, he was direct, he was honest, and he spoke the truth about orcas. And he spoke the truth about this particular orca. This picture is of Mother Orca Tahlequah, and it was Ken who broke the news back in the summer of 2018 that there was a mother orca doing something that we know orcas do, like other highly intelligent social animals, giraffes, elephants, dolphins. When they lose a beloved, they grieve. And so what happened that summer, and I know you all remember this, was Mother Orca Tahlequah was seen in the waters of the Salish Sea, and she was carrying her newborn calf. And this calf lived only a half an hour. This was a very big deal that the Southern residents had a birth at all. They had gone 3 years without a birth, and this one was also a female, which made it all the more precious. And as you look at this picture, which Steve Ringman took in the last hours of the light after spending all day trying to find her, you can see that she's got something up there by her head that's clearly not her body. And as you look midway down her body, you see the little tiny fin of the baby that she carried. Well, she carried that baby either bouncing on her head or carrying it just ever so carefully in her teeth for 17 days and 1,000 miles all around the Salish Sea. It was an incredible witness. And we decided at the paper to stay with her, that, you know, this was something that we weren't going to let go. And so I did stay with her and begged rides on boats. And Steve and I were out there with her, sending out dispatches about how she was doing and what she was doing, which was not unprecedented. We know orcas do this, but no one had ever seen an orca whale do this for so long. People were starting to worry about her. Was she getting anything to eat? The exhaustion of pushing a 6-foot long, 350-pound calf and having to go down and go get it after every breath so that the tide wouldn't sweep it away, which she did do. You know, when Steve took this picture, we were all alone with her. There was only the Sound Watch boat that had brought us out, and her. And you could hear her breathing and how labored it was. You could see how the arch of her back was not the natural dive because she was carrying this calf. And you just thought to yourself, what was she going through? She carried this baby for 18 months. All of the other members of the pod knew she was pregnant because of their incredible echolocation. And they stayed with her. They were not necessarily right next to her, but they were always in acoustic contact. And, there were times that they were really with her almost in procession. So it was quite a thing. The whole region witnessed this through our coverage. This coverage is still today the most widely read story ever written in the Seattle Times. When she finally dropped that calf, I don't think she ever dropped it. I think it just fell apart. There were 1.8 million people reading that story. So Mother Orca Tahlequah, she was the one who brought the story of the orcas to the world and made people understand their plight, that they are not just random animals, they're families, close-knit families. And this mother was grieving the baby she lost. We know from the work at Sam Wasser at the University of Washington that it's very challenging for orca mothers today to bring their calves all the way to birth and successful birth because they don't get enough to eat. He has tracked with help from the others in his lab the feces from these animals and analyzed them, and through the analysis of the stress hormones in their scat, been able to recognize the amount of food hunger related stress that they're under, and drawn the conclusion that about a third of these losses are coming because of hunger stress. So that's pretty sobering. So you have to ask yourself, in a place this beautiful, that's Mount Baker, this is up in the San Juan Islands, what could be wrong? What's going on? And so at the Seattle Times, after that breaking news coverage of Mother Orca Tahlequah, we decided to go deep with the orcas, stay with them, follow them everywhere they go throughout their foraging range, and try to understand what was the problem, what were the limiting factors to their survival. And, to do that was very difficult because there are very few orcas, and you have to get very special permission to be out on the boats with the researchers close enough to actually get these incredible pictures that Steve was taking. And then more difficult, they're not around. I mean, because the food has become so scarce for them, they're not coming around to the San Juan Islands like they really had been for so very long. 10,000 years, but they go where the food is. And so when the Fraser River began losing its Chinook runs, and also Puget Sound Chinook runs declined, you really weren't seeing the orcas coming around so much anymore. And so finally, we did get out there to the San Juan Islands in August, and we made our plan for how we were going to continue with the coverage. And we decided that really we needed to see them in three key places. We needed to see them up north, and we needed to see them in their southernmost foraging range, as well as in Puget Sound. And the thing that I want to stress to you is that orcas are actually in every single ocean of the world. There's only one orca, just one species, but there are many types. And each of these types of orcas, wherever they are in the world, is specialized by what they eat. When you're an orca, you are what you eat. So even though it's the same species, they have different behaviors in terms of what they eat. Their diet specialization is extreme, emphatic, and baked in. I mean, when you're born, you're an orca, and you theoretically could eat anything, but you're instructed from the moment by your mother what food is for you. And so here in the Northeastern Pacific, we actually have three types of orcas. And while they look very similar, they have very, very different diets. And that is how they're separated in terms of how they share space in the ocean. It's pretty impressive that they manage to share space without fighting like we do. And I think there's a lot we can actually learn from and be inspired by in orcas and how they operate, in their brilliance, in their close family bonds that last for life. Orca families stick together forever. The kids never leave the parents. They stay together in a vast ocean. Home is wherever one another is. And even though there are many different types of orcas, they have no aggression towards one another. Here in the Northeastern Pacific, as I said, we have three types. They're the northern resident orcas, and they are the same as the southern residents, except in their range, where they are, which is in the Barossa Archipelago, Southeast Alaska, north of the Campbell River. However, like the southern residents, they specialize in eating fish. Resident orcas eat fish. period, mostly salmon, preferentially Chinook, because of course they're the biggest, fattiest salmon in the sea. The other type of orca is the so-called transient orca, also called a Biggs killer whale after Michael Biggs, the researcher. They eat marine mammals. They eat seals. They eat baby gray whales. They eat sea lions. They can eat any marine mammal, no matter how big it is. It's just a different strategy for how they gang up on the big ones. And they will not eat fish. They only eat marine mammals. And then finally, they're the offshores. These are rarely seen, and they eat sharks. We know that because of the way their teeth get worn down over the course of their life because of the very rough skin of a shark. So that's the situation here in the Northeastern Pacific. But if you were off the coast of Chile, you would see orcas, and they specialize in snatching baby seals right off the beach. That's how they eat. There are other orca whales that run tuna to death. There are others that rinse seals off of ice floes by ganging up on them and creating a wave together that will wash the seal right into their jaws. So they're incredible predators. They are the top predator in the ocean. They can eat whatever they are good at eating. They get their prey, whatever it is, but nothing eats an orca. Nothing. Think about that. And you know, when you watch them, they have a certain elan. They have that top predator confidence. I mean, they move with that muscular, fast, 60-mile-an-hour burst swim, go get it. That's like nothing else. And they have these miraculous abilities, you know, in addition to their powerful interlocking conical teeth that allow them to shred a salmon with a shake of their head. They, of course, have echolocation. And this is far beyond the ordinary biosonar of just a ping. You know, they send a click train out from their melon to image that which is in front of them at depth. Because remember, they're hunting in the sea and it's black dark, most of where they're trying to get their prey, because Chinook, you know, they don't school. They have to chase them down one by one, and they're wily, worthy adversaries. I mean, these Chinook, you know, dive and swim and hide in holes and try to survive. And the orcas have to chase them down. And they do this with this beam that they can point and move with the melon of their head like a flashlight, and they can actually image the fish. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, they do it because they want to make sure it's a Chinook. And they do it by being able to image the swim bladder inside the fish. And if it's a, you know, big enough to be a Chinook swim bladder, they'll keep right up with the chase. If it's a pink, they won't bother. If it's a sockeye, they don't eat that either. And it's very frustrating to the scientists who study these whales, because they're food limited, and yet they won't eat these very abundant other fish that are all around them when they come. But if you think about this from an evolutionary standpoint, you know, the orcas co-evolved in the Salish Sea with salmon. And back in the day, it made sense to specialize in Chinook. It's the biggest thing, most calories for the hunting effort. Why wouldn't you? And besides, they're there year round, or nearly so. And the orcas follow these fish through their migratory range. They go after the chum in the fall in the Puget Sound. That's when we see them in the winter. They're chasing the chum that are headed down to the Nisqually River and elsewhere. They're up in the San Juan Islands going after the summer Chinook up there, headed back to the Fraser River and then coming back to Puget Sound. And in the spring, they're at the mouth of the Columbia. And in the winter, they're down at the mouth of the Sacramento River. So they're following the Chinook across their migratory range. But the problem is when you get into a situation with these serial failures of the rivers, when there's nothing going for them in the Sacramento or the Columbia or Puget Sound or the Fraser River, what are they supposed to do? And the southern residents are the ones that live in the most urban environment. They're the ones who live with us. These are the black leather jacket orcas stuck in the urban areas from Vancouver, BC, all the way down to San Francisco. Incredible athletes. They can burst swim at 60 miles an hour. When they chase a fish underwater, they're rotating and diving and stalling. And you know, it's an incredible thing. I wish I could see it underwater. And scientists are beginning to actually fit some orcas with little cameras on their heads, and they're beginning to do recordings of each and every hunt so that they can really see what goes on underwater. These orcas will naturally swim 50 miles a day. They're always on the move. They're always together. They swim over a vast foraging range all the way from Southeast Alaska down to the Golden Gate Bridge. It's nothing for them to swim 50 miles in a day. And they're incredibly playful. I mean, this is the thing, when you get to watch orcas in the wild, just being themselves, when they're relaxed and they're not on the hunt, they're constantly touching. The mothers are always playing with the babies, just sliding them over their backs or giving them a little toss. All the adults are interacting. They're highly, highly social animals. They have a lot of fun, it seems like. They do these fantastic leaps and jumps seemingly just for fun. So we decided that the first place we needed to go for our work was actually up north to see the northern residents. Now, why would we do that? We did that because the northern residents are doing fine. In the southern residents, we're down to only 73 animals in 3 pods at this point, and recovery has proved entirely elusive. We're not doing any better than we have since they were first listed. In fact, they keep declining. So we thought, all right, let's go see where they're doing well up north, where the population has been steadily increasing year by year by year, ever since the captures stopped. There's like 300 of them, and they have more babies all the time. So we went up there to see what's the difference. Why so well? They're like why are they doing so well? They were a perfect control group, really, for a couple of journalists trying to figure out what's going on, and the scientists who are working with these animals. Well, it very quickly became clear what the difference is. The difference is they're up in the Broughton Archipelago and other waters north of us that are much quieter, much cleaner, and much greater variety of fish. And furthermore, some of the fish that they target, coming out of Puget Sound, for instance, those Puget Sound salmon, they turn right when they leave the Salish Sea, when they leave the Strait of Juan de Fuca. They head up to Alaska to go get big and fat in the ocean for a couple of years. So not only do they have a greater variety of fish, they get first crack at the fish that are headed down south to where the southern residents forage. So, you go around the Broughton Archipelago and other places up there, like Orca Lab with Paul Spong, who you see here walking around this giant mother cedar. And what are you looking at? You're looking at a place that looks a lot more like Washington State and Puget Sound used to. Lots of forests all the way to the waterline, quieter water, cleaner water, more fish, bigger trees, and in a far more intact ecosystem. And no one should be surprised that if you have salmon forests like these, you're going to have salmon. And if you've got salmon, you've got orcas. We tend to break these big problems down into pieces that are too tiny and focus on only this piece or only that piece because we like it better or we have more control over it or whatever the heck. The thing about orcas is they really tell us about the integrity and the state of our entire ecosystem throughout their foraging range. And what they're telling us is we've cut too many trees and we've degraded too many rivers and we don't have enough salmon. A lot of people talk about boat noise and disturbance, and we'll talk about more of that too in this talk. It's important. We know it's important. There's no question it's important. And especially when fish are greatly depleted, it's even more important because you better be able to get every single fish you have a chance to get. But look, for instance, at the marine mammal eating orcas. They're doing fine in Puget Sound, even with the same amount of noise and ruckus, and in fact, even more pollution because they're eating higher up on the food chain. What's the difference? They've got plenty to eat, lots of seals, plenty of things to eat. So that was always Ken Balcomb's theory that, noise is fine to work on, and we should do everything we can. But the action, as far as he was concerned, it was all about the fish. If they had enough to eat, these other things weren't as important. They're like us. They are not fasting adapted. Orcas have to eat every day, and they need a full meal in order to be at their best, and certainly in order to reproduce. These teeth belong to Namu, the killer whale who was the first captive killer whale in the world. And he was captured by Ted Griffin, Washington State resident. And, Ted Griffin had an animal show down there on the waterfront back in the day. It was an aquarium show. And he was a collector. He was an excellent collector, and he had everything but an orca. And so he had this wish to go get an orca for his aquarium down there on the waterfront. No connection, by the way, with today's aquarium. And so word got out that he was looking for an orca. And so when a couple of fishermen up there caught one accidentally in their net, they let him know. And he went up there with a backpack full of cash that he collected from waterfront businesses to bring back the killer whale, who would be known as Namu. And when he got back to Seattle, when he was coming underneath the Deception Pass Bridge, there were thousands of people looking over the side of the bridge down at this flotilla that included a killer whale and a towed tank. Who could imagine such a thing? So he got to Seattle on the waterfront, and he was given the key to the city, welcomed by the mayor and thousands of people who were thrilled to see this man who'd brought them a killer whale. And he put Namu in a tank and taught him how to play with a ball and beg for fish. These are Namu's teeth. They're at the Burke Museum. Namu died after less than a year from the pollution in Elliott Bay because we didn't used to use sewage treatment. These people are putting their hands on a totem pole that was carved by Lummi Nation carver Jewel James, and they were taking this totem pole down to Miami. The Lummi Nation was doing a protest on behalf of the last captive killer whale anywhere in America. She's still there. She's been there for more than 50 years. She was captured in Penn Cove, and Tokatai is her name. She's still there. She's still in captivity all this time. And these people were putting their hands on this carving that Jewel made as a blessing. And he took it down there along with other allies for Tokatai to pray for and insist on her release. The people who run the Miami Seaquarium wouldn't let the Lummi Nation delegation inside. So you know what they did? They set up loudspeakers and played orca calls for her from the sidewalk. So one of the things that we decided to do when we finished up north was take a look around Puget Sound. And the people at NOAA Fisheries Northwest Region Office in Seattle were incredibly helpful to us. They helped us with our work by taking us out on the research boats, which is the only way that you ever get pictures like this. They were going out to do what they call a health survey, just basically see who's there and how they're looking, and also pick up any scat they could get or any other evidence that would help put together the pieces of this question of how the orcas are doing and what can we do to help them. The thing that you can learn from the scat that is collected on a trip like this is not only whether they're eating and if they're getting enough food, but where the fish come from. With DNA analysis, it's actually possible to trace to the river the salmon that were the meal of that orca. This is very helpful because it helps you target the most important rivers for orca recovery. It also revealed just how wide their foraging range is, but also showed us where some really key places are. The people of Seattle and Puget Sound have a lot to do with orca recovery. That you might think, oh, those are urban rivers that can't be very important, but they actually are. The Green River is an important producer of Chinook still. And fortunately, finally, work is going to go get underway on the Howard Hansen Dam to provide fish passage for the first time to help boost those Chinook runs. That's very good news. That's very important. There's all kinds of work going on around Puget Sound to benefit salmon, all kinds of dam removals going on to benefit salmon. All these actions count, each and every one of them counts. And these rivers in Puget Sound are actually very important. The Columbia is an incredibly important producer of salmon for the orcas. And we know this from the evidence that turns up in their diet. I'm showing you this because I want you to know that it's possible to make things a lot better than they are. This is the Green River. It's a river that actually goes through some pretty tough territory for salmon. It eventually winds through Kent and Tukwila and finally flows into the Duwamish and then into Elliott Bay. But look how good it looks up here. This is in the upper reach. The entire upper reach of the Green River is really quite good habitat for salmon, and a lot of it's being made better by the King County Flood District with removals of all kinds of old infrastructure that's basically not needed anymore. These are there's a lot of stuff that we've built out there. Some of it's been around since around 1900 and or old diversions, old docks, old seawalls, all kinds of stuff that's degraded the natural floodplain of the rivers. And the flood district and King County has been putting a lot of money and study and heart into making it possible for salmon to make it from these better areas and improve the areas that are degraded for salmon survival. And it all counts. These little fish, this is a herring that I'm holding in my hand. People forget about the forage fish, but if you don't have the little fish, you don't get the blackfish. No, you don't, because the little fish feed the big fish that feed the blackfish. That's a saying in Coast Salish country, and it is true. Surf spelt, herring, these are the fish that feed salmon when they're young. And you get herring if you've got natural beaches, because that's where they lay their eggs. You want herring, you've got to have eelgrass. You want eelgrass, you've got to have natural beaches. You don't have natural beaches if you have all sorts of bulkheads and other things that kill that connection between the uplands and the sea. That is a very important place. That's where it all goes on. That's where the sediment rinses onto the beach that provides the nesting area for the eggs for these forage fish. And if you have a bulkhead there, you get this violent slapping wave energy and erosion, and you lose a natural beach, and you're not going to have forage fish. Obviously, if you degrade the pastures of eelgrass, either with pollution or with development, you're not going to have the nurseries that these herring need. That this is the time when they're spawning. This time of year, it's the time of abundance of herring, and this is a fiesta. This is when everything feasts on those beautiful lipid-rich eggs of the herring. And so I want to emphasize to you again, from the biggest trees that are holding the banks and shading them and taking care of the streams, to these little silvery fish out there that feed the bigger fish, all those connections, all those pieces and parts, they all together are what create the ecosystem that nurtures these magnificent orca whales. Unfortunately, a lot of it looks like this. If you're a salmon, it's not going to work out for you, is it? No. This is tragically the Green River. It's now the second largest warehousing district on the West Coast. There's no going back from this. It's very hard to do much when you've already degraded it this much. There's no space. I mean, you can buy parking lots some places sometimes and rip stuff out and start over in some small places. But man, once it's gotten like this, it's pretty hard to make a difference. You don't make it better when you don't have any trees at all. Imagine how hot that water gets. Think like a salmon. If you think like a salmon, you can figure out how to help an orca. But by way of hope, this is California. Now, we're not California. We are nothing like California. I mean, I-5 through Seattle is like a model railroad compared to I-5 in California or anything else. I mean, Steve and I were landing in San Francisco to go work in the Sacramento River and learn about the poor winter run Chinook, which is one of the most hammered, degraded rivers and one of the most endangered Chinook runs anywhere. And we're landing, and I say, Steve, you got to take that picture. And this thing that looks like it's from outer space, I mean, it's just a development. It's nothing special. It's all over the place. And, we don't have this level of population density yet. And the thing that we do have still going for us that they don't have in California is a salmon identity. I mean, people here in Washington State still think of ourselves as a salmon state. We call ourselves the Evergreen State. We're a salmon state. We know that. We cherish that. We take care of that. It's who we are, all of us. It's who we are. When relatives come from out of town, what do? We take them to the Ballard Locks and hope there's something there, right? It's really important to hold on to that identity and to cherish it. We went out to dinner one night after we'd been out working on the Sacramento River, and it'd been like 105 degrees. And the waitress took my credit card at the end of the dinner, and she said, "Oh, Seattle Times, what are you doing down here?" I said, "Oh, well, we're here doing a story about orcas and salmon." And she said, "Oh, well, I don't get cable, so I don't know anything about that." I thought, how sad is that? Okay, both of these animals actually still are here in California, barely hanging on, but she didn't even know it. Don't ever let that happen to us. You know, as long as we remember these animals, that they're still out there. This is L25. She is still out there with her family, taking care of them, you know, leading them to fish. Now, when she takes them all the way down there to California, because she was taught to by her mother before her, is she getting fish, or is she just working off the memory of fish? If we do all the things that we can do to bring back the salmon, you can be sure that she will actually be getting some fish for her family. I regard this as a very hopeful and beautiful picture. That sweet little baby orca that you see next to her mom. What she got there in her mouth? Can you see it? It's a salmon. Now, that baby orca is so young that it's you know, still nursing, so it's not going to eat that salmon. It's just carrying it around, maybe learning how to be a big orca someday. This is a video that I shot with my phone when I was out with Brad Hansen. I love this video. It's just my old amateur video with an iPhone, but to me, it captures what's so special about living where we live. That on any given day in winter, you could be so lucky that you'd be at Mukwemuk's Park, or you'd be at, you know, somewhere in West Seattle. Maybe you're on Vashon, maybe you're downtown, and all of a sudden the excitement happens. Here they come, right here. You know, downtown orcas. Who's got that? Well, we still do. This was in, I want to say February, and JK and L Pod were in town. And it was the first time the three pods have been together. And you can see they're playing and frisking and frolicking and spy hopping. And I wanted to show you this just to remind you of how special it is that we live where we live. And we still share beautiful winter days like this with these animals. And I want to remind you too that we're only borrowing our place here, that we want it to be like this and even better for everyone coming after us. These beautiful animals have been frisking and frolicking in these waters for 10,000 years. They were here before us. They have a right to be here.
I love that.
I love to hear them breathe. To me, that's a sound from the beginning of the world. I think that to me, the wonder of seeing them playing, socializing, traveling like this is right off of Vashon Island. They're headed north, going downtown for dinner. Really horsing around. So much play, so much affection between them. Just cruising, not going particularly fast. So that's where we live. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
So Renee.
A couple questions.
Yeah, okay.
Mike asked, and I think it was when you were profiling the importance of the herring, and you were saying forest fish or foraging fish?
Forage, F-O-R-A-G, forage.
And then earlier we got a question from Barb about the David Williams fossil book that you mentioned. Would you be willing to share the title of that book?
Oh, thank you for that question. I don't know, it's not out yet. It's coming. This is a work in progress. It's been written, but it's not yet through the whole process with the University of Washington Press. But that doesn't mean he can't talk about it. He's my friend. Yes.
And then someone also asked, Louise asked, where in Westchester did you grow up? Because you might be sharing a neighborhood, it sounds like, or a skating pond.
Millwood. Millwood, it's near Chappaqua, near Mount Kisco, near White Plains. Yeah, Millwood.
And Michael's asking, can we assume that the salmon we buy in reputable markets in Seattle are not threatening resident orcas?
So here's how I answer that question for myself. If you are concerned about taking a Chinook salmon out of a mother orca's mouth, don't buy Chinook. Buy sockeye. Buy chum. For that matter, buy lingcod. We have so many choices. I mean, we're just so spoiled. I'm reminding you that I'm living on the East Coast right now. So every time I go to the store, I just cry. Lettuce. It's like, I don't know, almost $4 a head, and it's tiny and miserable looking. Fish, I like haddock, but I get a little tired of it. I mean, we have so many choices out where we live. You just don't need to worry about this. In the summer, sockeye is a wonderful choice. They don't eat it. We love it. It's a great choice. And the rest of the time, you can always go with, lingcod is delicious. There are other choices. I'm not saying that every Chinook is coming out of a mother orca's mouth. It depends on where it was caught. And it's just so hard to know that. It is so difficult, even at a very reputable, good store. It's hard for them to know exactly where that fish was caught. If it's a terminal fishery someplace, rather than a mixed stock ocean fishery where everybody's all together, if it's a terminal fishery, I wouldn't worry about it. Orca's probably not going to be snatching it there. But, mostly just skip it. I can't afford it anyway. So it's not a problem for me.
$50 a pound isn't so bad, huh?
Yeah, right.
Got some great questions coming in too. Barb asked, what can we do specifically to encourage orca health?
Okay. Oh, it's such a long list. So number one, we also are fortunate to live in a place where a lot of people do care about this. And so wherever you are listening to this tonight, you can find an NGO that's working on habitat. Planting trees is a great thing to do. Taking care of shoreline with beach cleanups is a really good thing to do. All these things that might seem so small to you, they actually super add up, and every place matters. And if you are actually doing something physically with your neighbors on behalf of this place that you love, you're going to feel better too, and you're going to meet some great people. So wherever you are, find somebody to work with in cleaning up the habitat. Plant a tree, rip out blackberries. Native plants feed pollinators and birds. Pollinators, insects are good for fish. Fish are good for orcas. So, it is all connected. So whatever your particular passion is, work on that. That's number one. Go out and do stuff, and do it with these NGOs who've got the tools, the know-how, and the places. And you can just go join them on these work parties. So that's number one. Number two, don't pollute. All the basic stuff, you know this, right? Take your car to a car wash. Don't put anything scary down the drain. Anything your grandmother didn't use cleaning her house, you shouldn't use either, and you don't need to. Eat low on the food chain. Eat simple, live light, consume less. Remember that you're one of billions of people. Take it easy on the planet. Specifically for orcas, where we are at, it is about clean water and it is about fish. So it's about taking care of the salmon habitat, and we all live in salmon country. So vote, really pay attention to politics, including and especially local politics. This is where local land use decisions get made. This is where warehouses get built, where instead we should have rivers. I mean, if you live in Des Moines, if you live in Kent, if you live in Seattle, if you live in Everett, if you live in Shoreline, you should be passionately a pest at your county and city council meetings, at your zoning board meetings. This is where the real damage gets done, in these little tiny things over and over and over again, all over salmon country. You can make a big difference by being informed about, participating in, and voting in your local community. Man, if I could put that on a flag, I would. So that counts. And be informed. Read the paper, read books. There's so many good salmon books. And there's so many good ways to be informed. This is a good thing tonight, and there's so many more things like it. So thank you for tuning in. So those are just some small things. Do the work, team up with your neighbors, participate in local government decision-making, vote, and be informed. And don't be afraid to speak out, about this. Let people know you care, and then they'll care too. Take people outside, go outside. I know you people do. You're mountaineers, for heaven's sakes, and bless you for that.
Gordy asked, are marine mammal populations in our area in good shape? They do eat other fish.
Yeah, they are. And this is good news. I mean, the Marine Mammal Protection Act worked. People stopped killing seals and sea lions and whales. It's a miracle, really, honestly. There are more whales, or Southern residents are the exception. They're the exception. Every other whale population and marine mammal population in our region is booming and doing great. There are more gray whales, there are more humpbacks, there are more transient and big killer whales, there are more seals, there are more sea lions, there are more dolphins. Puget Sound is wonderfully, marvelously alive. And it's not only the Marine Mammal Protection Act, it's the sewage treatment plants that we've finally built. And it's the CSO fixes that we're doing. It's the water pollution work that we're paying for. It actually makes a difference. Puget Sound is cleaner today, and it's more alive than it was in the time of our parents. In the Seattle area, it's our parents' generation that started this. They decided to tax themselves to build metro and clean up Lake Washington, and good for them. And we're following in their footsteps and paying it forward. And that's what we have to do. You know, I want to lift my hat, and I hope your spirits, to all of the work that is going on in the region. From Washington is the dam busting state. I mean, we've taken down more big old dams that weren't doing anything for anybody than any other state. And we're about to be eclipsed by California. They're taking down the Klamath dams, which is going to make a difference for orcas. The Klamath, as you, I hope, know, starts in Eastern Oregon and goes all the way down to Redwood country. It's a changing time. People really are understanding more than ever the connections between the forests and the freshwater and the saltwater, and that it all counts. And so all these things we talk about, go plant a tree, go work with a habitat group, do these things, but also encourage your legislators and your state and your senators and your congressmen that you care about salmon and orcas, and you vote and you want money put into habitat. I do think we have to talk about taxes. We don't have an income tax in Washington. I'm from New York. We have this really useful thing called taxes. They pay for stuff like, you know, roads and sidewalks and public schools and public health. And, you know, maybe it's time for an initiative, a habitat initiative, to pay for orca and salmon. You know, we're at the stage now where we need to be doing $100 million dam removals, multi-$100 million dam removals, multi-$100 million seawall removals, dike takeouts, tide gate takeouts, all kinds of infrastructure out there that is hurting salmon and breaking down the functionality of the natural world. Here's the thing that makes me optimistic. Every place, every time we've done this, it has worked. You can count on nature. People are super difficult, but nature you can count on. We're not trying to do world peace here or anything like that. We're just trying to get clean, cold water flowing downhill. And gravity does most of that as long as we don't wreck the rest. So, you know, these are basic things. Nobody knows how to do it better than we do. We just need to do a whole lot more of it and commit the money to pay for it. And we've got the money. This is a very wealthy area. We have a terribly unequal distribution of both tax collection and distribution, but we could and should fix that too.
Steve asked, in addition to development, what are some other upstream issues impacting the lower end of the food chain, and how much does stormwater pollution harm streams and rivers?
Stormwater is really important. Stormwater is the most important pollutant to Puget Sound at this point. Think about what's in stormwater. It's literally everything that goes, that flows over a roof or over a parking lot. Would you drink it? No. I mean, if you see it underwater, there's footage that's been taken by a wonderful activist diver in Seattle. It's a very simple thing. All she did was film water coming out of an underwater pipe. It's a storm drain. Everything's fine, you know, everything's going great. Puget Sound is a very colorful, beautiful underwater world, and all of a sudden this black plume is coming in, and it's like ashes falling all over everything, and it's just stormwater. But it's all the stuff coming off the parking lots and paving. So stormwater is very important. We're way behind on doing anything about it because it's terribly expensive. Back to money again, right? But yeah, stormwater matters. It matters a lot. And this is again where you can come in. Don't make it worse. Be very careful about what you let happen on your driveway. Is your car leaking oil? Where do you park your car? Where do you wash your car? Cars are incredibly dirty, toxic beasts. The shredded tires are killing salmon. You know, cars are not a friend to salmon. So be very careful with your car, where you park it, where you wash it, and how well you maintain it. Don't make it worse.
We've got quite a few more questions. Would you be open to answering a couple more, or what's your
Yeah,
preference?
no, that's fine.
So Barb asked, what will end the sacred Southern Residents Pod's existence here?
Oh, hopefully nothing ever. You know, look, these are powerful animals. These are brilliant animals. They can do it, but they need the same thing we need. They need to eat. They need to be left alone to do their thing. They need space. It's not magic and it's not miracles. It's just work. And we can do that work and we even know what it is. That's the thing. So to me, this always seems easier than so many other things. We actually know what to do and we're capable of doing it. We just need to do a whole lot more of it. This is a leadership issue and it's a commitment issue. And in Washington, we even have the initiative process. So don't forget that. If we have to do it ourselves, we'll do it. You know, if people care, and I know they do, a group like the Mountaineers is a powerful group. Each one of you here tonight knows 10 more people. And I'll imagine every one of them cares about this. So that is just not even an allowed thought. It's not an allowed thought. We cannot talk about what will end their reign. It's more about what do we need to do to make sure that that day will never come.
So Valerie, I'm sorry, that was yours. No, I didn't do that one yet. Oh, is there any indication that if Chinook continues to decrease, that they will evolve to eat other salmon, or is the population decrease evidence that they won't?
You know, this is frustrating. I wish they would eat anything, you know, be like us, but that's not how it is. You know, they are what they are, wherever they are. It's not just our orcas. It's not like the Southern residents are like uniquely difficult. It's part of what it means to be an orca. You are what you eat, and you learn it from birth, and that's it. They're very culturally emphatic. You don't eat your cat, they're not going to eat a seal. That's it. It's not happening. So don't wait for it. They do eat chum, so it's not totally impossible. They'll even take a lingcod now and then in winter, but mostly they need salmon. And you know what? In the Pacific Northwest, damn it, they ought to be able to have it.
So Lynda asked, what are the current trends with the amount of commercial Chinook fishing and the impact on resident orca Chinook supply?
Yeah, you know, there's just not that much of it anymore. You know, I think fishing has been greatly cut back more than anything else because it's the easiest thing to target. You know, if let's say you shut off all fishing, just all of it, sport fishing, everything. I mean, first of all, it's a problem because if you did that in Washington, what about BC? What about, you know, plenty of Washington fish get caught in BC fisheries. Plenty of Washington fish get caught in mixed stock ocean fisheries. So I can't do anything about that. You know, again, I think it really comes back to development. Nobody wants to hear that because development is what creates tax base for local communities. That's why you build, you know, warehouses in what used to be some of the best soil in the state, right along a beautiful river. So that's why you do that. That's why we've been doing that. And until we break that link between development and funding for your local library, this is going to be a problem. And we see it with other issues, forestry. You know, we're chopping down state forests to pay for fire trucks in Hoquiam. Why? You know, we really can't think of anything smarter than that. This is a failure of imagination. And, you know, it's about how we're doing things and going after the last little smidge of fishing. You can do it. You can do anything politically that you set your mind to. And you could even create, by the way, an allocation of fishing for orcas, which we do not do. So if you want to talk about fishing, let's create a quota and allocation for them too. That's being talked about. So, you know, but I'm just urging you to think about in terms of priorities, where the damage is really getting done and where the fixes need to happen. Quit breaking stuff, quit making it worse, and fix what you can fix. And there's a lot out there we can fix that nobody would miss or mind. There's a lot of stuff out there that we just need to spend the money to remove, take out, and make better. And by the way, that creates jobs. So I don't think it's about taking away more things. It's about fixing what's broken and not breaking more.
So we're at 8 o'clock and I want to be sensitive of your time. We have a few more questions. I'd love to give you at least the next one because that probably expresses something that a lot of us feel, which is thank you very much. And this person, Dima, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, said, I first came across your work in 2016 when I had the opportunity to experience the Elwha in its early days dam-free. Can you share with us a bit of your personal story, how you came to be a researcher, writer, storyteller, and what some of your favorite lifetime projects have been?
Oh, that sounds like a lot of different questions, and I wish I was there in person to, share over that. But, I think one of my favorites has to be, honestly, standing by the Elwha River after the dams came down with one of the tribal members, with Steve Ringman, the photographer, and we were just there to watch the fish come back and take pictures of that for a story in the newspaper about the success of the Elwha recovery, which is very young. It's only been about 10 years, so early days, and we know it's going to be at least 20 years before those fish are really robust. But I mean, you got to love standing by the Elwha River and watching big kings swimming where they hadn't been in a century. I mean, if that doesn't make you believe in the power and resilience of nature and the beauty of its symmetry, all the pieces and parts coming together just like they need to in that river now, once again, and the fact that that was the political decision that we as a country made. That was the result of an act of Congress. And ordinary people like each and every one of us just saying, yeah, let's do that and let's pay for it and let's do it. And we did do it and it's done and it's working. You've got to hold on to things like that and believe in them and know that now you can just go do another and another and another. And whether it's small or big, believe me, it will work because nature is incredibly powerful and resilient. And, we're not going to take down every dam. And we're not going to take out every road, and nobody's talking about that, and nobody should be worried about that. But we can take down some dams and we can take out some roads. We can make some space. And when we do, nature comes back. I got into being a newspaper reporter and writing stories about this, mostly because of my fascination with and love for the natural world. But, we're part of the natural world too. Human history is natural history is human history, and this is our home, and that's why we love it so, and it is our job to care for it. And I think that the beauty of living where we do is, first of all, there's still a lot left. I mean, you go anywhere else and there's a lot longer gone than is the case here. There's still a lot of space and there's a lot of heart for this work. We can't do it here. Can't do it anywhere. So let's do it.
So someone asked about the recent Seattle Times article about, and it sort of feeds on something you said earlier about the booming seal and sea lion population. So other sea mammals are actually doing quite well, and how this might impact impending salmon recovery. So what are your thoughts about the removal of these two species?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess by now I've become very skeptical about that kind of intervention. It always seems like every time we do this, there's some unintended consequence that we didn't think of or couldn't have thought of that makes it not such a great idea. And we've seen this time and time again. Don't forget, you've got the big killer whales out there doing a fine job on seals. And the more they eat, the more there are, more big killer whales there are. I mean, that is a population that's growing like mad. So, it's a food chain. Everything is connected. I just don't know that we're really smart enough to get out there with rifles and start picking them off. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't think we know enough about it yet to make a decision like that. I'm not sure it's the right decision. So, and I know that the Washington Academy of Sciences just looked at this and, I'd want to know a lot more, and they said they wanted to know more. So we'll see. I think that certainly sounds like a last resort kind of step.
And aside from lots of gratitude, there's one last question or two that I'll kind of combine from Carolyn and Leilani, who are talking about the toxicity of chemicals that are in tires. So is there any
Yeah.
regulatory moves that are afoot to restrict the chemical makeup of tires to reduce the threat to silver and coho and urban streams as they enter in the fall?
Yeah, boy, I wish I could tell you that there's this great breakthrough or some huge impetus that's coming out of the federal government to make it so, because we have done that with other threats that we've identified and quickly even. Man, it just needs to happen. And unfortunately, I can't tell you that that's in the offing. I'm not aware that it is. I do want to give a shout out to the incredible work of the scientists who figured that out. This is an amazing detective story of first understanding what was causing it and then what aspect of autos was causing the problem, because there was clearly a nexus. The more traffic there was, the more pre-spawn mortality there was, but what was it? What was it exactly that was causing it? And they finally figured it all the way out to a chemical that's actually a preservative on a tire. That's impressive. And it's on all tires. And I just bought a new set of tires not long before that news, before I broke that story. And I thought, oh my God, I would go out and buy a new set tomorrow if they were salmon safe. Somebody produced that product so I can go buy it. It's not there yet.
That's it for the chat room. Thanks for answering all those questions. That's quite a list.
I would have one question to Renee. You are going to record this and put it up? I can't.
It's being recorded, so yeah, we'll make sure it's available on our YouTube channel for the Naturalist.
Okay, you could always send me a link and I can send it to everybody who signed up.
Okay.
Okay, I really appreciate your talking to us. Lynda, it was fantastic. So
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Keep doing all your good work out there. Go plant a tree.
Thank you.
I'm going to end the whole.
Thanks, Lynda.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks Renee too for helping.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Renee.
Good night. It's not that late.
Good night.
I'm going to end the meeting.